Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. We want to see you. We want to see you. Open the eyes of our heart, Lord. Open the eyes of our heart. We want to see you. We want to see you. We want to see you high and lifted up, shining with the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing holy, holy, holy. As we sing holy, holy, holy. As we sing holy, holy, holy. We want to see you. That's part of why we gathered here tonight. Hallelujah. We want God to open the eyes of our hearts. This is an opportunity where we can share our hearts in a safe place. There's no time restrictions. This is all about us tonight, you tonight. My name is Pastor Johnson, and this is the Greater Harvest Church of God in Christ. Welcome. I have to get cue cards because all kind of other things be running through my mind, like the word for the day. But we won't go there. Let me look. I need to pray now. I had to write my card. Let's bow. Let's stand. Let's stand. I'm still a little nervous, so can y'all help me out? Can you clap your hands in the house of the Lord? Yes. I will not impose too much. I guess that's my only imposition for spiritual aerobics tonight is the hand clap with bowed heads. Father, we thank you for your love, your kindness, your tender, sweet mercy, more precious than silver or gold. Thank you, Father God, for the day that you blessed us with. Thank you for life, health, and energy. Thank you, Father, how you look beyond our fault and you see our need. Thank you for holding us in the hollow of our hand, your hand. Thank you for gathering us together tonight. A wonderful opportunity and experience with you. We pray this prayer by faith in Jesus' name. Thank God and amen. While you're yet standing, just another little reference point. Psalm 133 says, "Behold how good and pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard, that went down to the skirts of his garments. And as the dew of Harmon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion, for there the Lord commanded the blessings, even life forevermore." God commanding blessings for us today. Just raise your hand and says, "I'm blessed and highly favored." You may be seated. A little housekeeping. On my left, through those doors, you'll find your restroom. When you turn left, that first restroom, that's the ladies' room, and go on down midway the hall, that's the men's room. Just a little housekeeping for this evening. There's one streaming apparatus, and that is the church. And I'm asking, because we're in the house of the Lord, and each and every one of us is responsible and accountable to him and him alone, I'm just asking you to obey the rules for this house on tonight. One streaming apparatus, and that's streaming live through the church, through YouTube, and anywhere else. And if you need it, I'm sure Sheba will get it out so everybody can grab it. We don't want snippets, and this is not. See, they do stuff out there that we don't do in here. Okay? So I guess that's about all I need to say. We want to have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. If you look up, just look over your shoulder to your right up there. You see that thing shooting out stuff, and this one over here will shoot out stuff. What that is a disinfected 100% germ killer produced by the medical professionals. And I have that blowing because they say that we're in the season with all kind of stuff going on, okay? So you'll see them intermittently blowing and streaming throughout the congregation. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to sit on the side.
to Dr. Johnson for allowing us to use this church for everything, literally. We've been having events here for the last few weeks, and we're having a trunk or treat here on Saturday, so if you have kiddos or if you want to participate, definitely come out. This is Travis, this is Sinai, they'll talk in just a second. But I wanted to explain what the 6 is. So the 6 is sort of what convened us here today. And the 6 is an umbrella of organizations that work together for the common good to improve the 6th district. And so with that, it's different churches and organizations and just community members that really want to see the 6th district revitalized. And so you'll see us all over. We have some amazing things planned. We're trying to do at least one community event a month. If it's something that you feel like, you know what, we would love to contribute, we'd love to come on board in any kind of capacity, we would love to have you. We're having a major Thanksgiving giveaway in November. We are collaborating with over 30 different African-American organizations to provide over 4,000 items for the people that live in the 6th district. And so if that's something that you're interested in, let us know. We are so happy to see you all here. I'm going to turn it over to these two because I do a lot of talking and organizing, but they do a lot too.
You first. Oh, man, okay. Okay, thank you everyone for showing up. It's imperative that with respect to this political race that we're represented, I think the beauty of our community is that we're not monolithic, but we know when to collectively come together. I'm proud that Vice Mayor Rex Richardson is one of 2 people that could be representing the city. Surprising for some people to hear, but I think that it shows where the story that Mr. Steve Neal, Honorable Steve Neal, and many others many years ago has come into fruition, and so I'm proud of that. I know that for me, this neighborhood is everything to me. I was born and raised in this neighborhood, as was my mother and my grandmother before me, and I'm never gonna move away from this area. And I think that when you're tapped in and tied into this community, it's important that we shift and push forward with making things come back to what they once were. You know, my great uncle was a janitor at City Hall, and him and a couple other janitors got Jim Wilson, who was the first black city councilman in the city, elected. And that was people who collectively came together and engaged with the political apparatus. And we've had 50 years of political representation since then. You know, we got a minor hiccup right now, but it's okay. God's got plans. And that's why we're coming together, because we recognize and see a lot of the inefficiencies with representation for this community. And I ultimately hope that through these types of opportunities, the power structure knows that they have to engage with our community in order to land wherever they want to land. So thank you.
I'm Travis. They pretty much said everything. So I'd like to thank you guys for all coming out. I'm born and raised here since 1972. I done seen the transformation. I done seen a lot of things go in and out of this community. And I'm just happy that we was able to sit down and meet. I'm gonna be an observationist today. So enjoy yourself, keep it kosher, and let's have a wonderful night.
And let's just remember as a community that everything starts and stops in the church. Always need spiritual eyes. Don't necessarily have to be me, but get connected to someone who can help be your spiritual guide. I'm going to get the man of the hour. Big Mama say, make sure and silence your phones.
Okay, so he's going to get the vice mayor, but I wanted to give context to how this happened. A few weeks ago, about a month ago, there was a revitalization process that occurred at King Park, and there was a contingency of us, I'll stand up, that felt like we were excluded from that process, and that sort of fueled us to say, you know what, we'll bring the community together, and we'll do community for us, by us. And so we came together, we met at King Park on a Saturday morning. There were about 70 of us, and we came up with a list of action items for the 6th District, things that we felt like we needed and that needed immediate attention from city officials. Out of that, one of the things that was taken was that there's no engagement from the politicians in our city. And so I ran into Rex at First Fridays in Bixby Knolls, and I said, hey, I haven't seen you in the 6th District. And he said, I haven't been invited to the 6th District. I said, well, you're invited. Like, come on, I need you to come in. And so he said, here's my phone number, call me anytime, and I'm near. And I did that. I called him one night at like 9 o'clock. I was like, I'm so sorry to call you so late. I had an idea. And he was super responsive, and he said, this is a priority for me. I'm coming into the 6th District. Let's make this happen. So I definitely appreciate that, because I know that this is crunch time for him. He could be lots of other places right now, but he took the time to push into the 6th District, and I appreciate that. That meeting and led to this date, which led to us approaching Susie Price. Wait, hold on, we're not ready for that yet. That led to Susie Price coming in yesterday, because of course we wanted to provide the same opportunity, and we wanted to provide access to 6th District residents. So without further ado, Vice Mayor Rex Richardson. So I'll give you all a rundown of what this evening looks like. So we are going to give our Vice Mayor about 10 minutes to just introduce himself, tell us his story, and to go over his platform. Once he finishes that, we do have about 4 or 5 questions that specifically relate to African Americans in the 6th District and in Long Beach in general. And then after that, we have this microphone set up. We encourage you to come up and ask questions respectfully. I will say that the premise of this is that I told Rex that I felt like there was a disconnect with him and the African American community. There's like so many rumors flying around. Rex said this, Rex did this. I said, I would like you to come and like for this to be healing. So I asked that if you do come up to speak, that it's respectful and that it is well intended, and that it really is a fact-finding mission and not an attack. Oh, that's your.
Let's hear it for Sheba and Greater Harvest for opening up their doors and pulling this together. Here's how the conversation went. We were at First Fridays. I think I was with Nina and the girls. I was with Nina and the girls. We were at First Fridays in Bixby Knolls. I went over. I saw Sharon McLucas. I went and gave her a hug, probably a kiss on the cheek. And then I saw Sheba, and Sheba said, when you come to the 6th District? You know, me, I got defensive. I did this church run. I've been here. She was like, no, I'm not talking about a church run. When you coming to meet with us? I pulled out the calendar, and we just said, let's set a date. I said, I want to come in. I want to hear. I said, there's a lot of things that are similar about the community that I represent in North Long Beach and the Central Long Beach area, and I want to come in and talk. And, you know, she worked with our team and set this up, and I just am so thankful that this came together, and it's so well organized, and I'm just humbled that so many people were able to make it out for this conversation tonight. I'm Rex Richardson. I've been on the city council for 8 years, been vice mayor half of that time. Half the time I've been on the city council. My story goes back prior to Long Beach. I'm not originally from Long Beach. I was born on Scott Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois. My father was in the Air Force. He was military police in the Air Force. My mother was a welder at General Motors on the assembly line. Her roots were in Alabama. When my mother and father divorced, we moved back down to Alabama, a small town 35 minutes outside of Tuscaloosa. In that town, my mother was one of 5 students, the first 5 students to integrate her school. This was the 60s, when she was 7 years old. This is my daughter, Alina. She is 7 years old. Raise your hand, Alina. All right, and Mila's right there is 5. So the moment that she was volunteered by her mom, she was volunteered to integrate her school. She was the same age as my daughter. And I think about, as a father, what would it take for me to say, you know, hey, we just saw Ruby Bridges. We saw the harassment she went through. Yeah, take my kid. Take them next. That was the way that my grandmother was participating in the civil rights movement, was by volunteering her children and being a part of the change. Why did my grandmother do that? When Bull Connor said black students couldn't attend the University of Alabama, she was one of those people out there protesting. She was a part of the movement. She grew up in Jim Crow South. She took that and instilled that into my mother, who in turn put that into me and my sister and my little brother. This sense that we have a responsibility to be a part of the change, to create the kinds of communities that we all want. I moved to California when I was 11 years old on a Greyhound bus. My mother and father had divorced, so it was my sister, who's a year older than me, and my younger brother, who's just shy of 4 years younger than me. When we got here, we moved around a lot. We settled in the Covina area. We had a 2-bedroom apartment. My mom, she had 1 bedroom. My sister and brother shared a room, and I slept on the couch. And I loved it because that's where the TV was. Especially when I turned 15 or 16, I had access to the front door of my friends. But the other thing when I was 15 that I did was get a job. I worked at Jack in the Box. We called it Jack in the Crack. We flipped burgers, right? And at the same time, my mom worked at Arby's. We both worked for minimum wage. And my sister worked at the local stationery shop. My job was to pay the light bill. My mom's job was to pay the rent, and my sister paid the phone bill. We all contributed. We also committed to our education. My mother, who we saw what it was like when she had a good union job, working on assembly line with health care. We were proud of her. And the difference when we came to California, she worked minimum wage to make ends meet. Very different standard of living. So we all committed to go to school. I was a first-generation college student at Cal State Dominguez Hills. I remember the moment I got that college acceptance letter. It said all the things that my mother told me about working hard and getting an education. All of that was real. So I took advantage of that opportunity. And it was just like they say on Hamilton, I'm not going to throw away my shot. So I got involved. I joined Alpha Phi Alpha. I created clubs and organizations, and I became student body president at Cal State Dominguez Hills. I got an apartment in Long Beach. Oh, one other thing I'm going to note. I met my drop-dead gorgeous wife, Dr. Nina Richardson, on campus at Cal State Dominguez Hills. She was in student government with me. We were both in student government. I was student body president. She was a technology aide, and she's always been in STEM. She's now at USC. She's associate director of the business analytics program, the fastest growing business analytics program in America, and one of the top rated business analytics programs. She runs that program at USC. And so she's a lot smarter than I am. That's where she went and did her master's and her doctorate. I married up. So I moved to Long Beach. I got an apartment in Bixby Knolls. It was $900 a month. I was still in college. I got a job. Initially, it was Cal State Long Beach, California Faculty Association, as an organizer for faculty. Because I knew the CSU system, I understood the issues. I was involved in statewide student government. And so I got involved with the California Faculty Association. I learned the basics of community organizing. I deepened my commitment into the labor movement, became an organizer in South Los Angeles County. When I was 25, I had a tremendous opportunity. The bubble had burst. President Barack Obama did down payment assistance tax credit, $8,000 tax credit. I took advantage of it, and I bought a home when I was 25, something my parents never had the opportunity to do. It was in North Long Beach. There were 3 areas I could afford at that point, being 25 years old. It was the West Side, it was Central, Wrigley, and the North Side. And I put offers in all of those places, and I landed with a great house in a great neighborhood. And what I found was, people would say, don't go up there, don't go past, Del Amo. But what I found was a lot of proud working families, just like my family. Everybody in the household worked. I liked my neighbors. I had a front yard and a backyard. And not many people at 25, they were still in apartments. So I was proud to be a homeowner, even though it was in North Long Beach. I saw it as a good thing. When I was 26, I had an opportunity that changed my life. Councilman Steve Neal, let's recognize, I don't know if he's been recognized. This is Councilman Steve Neal, a trailblazer in Long Beach, the first African-American council member to be elected in any area outside the 6th district. So he's a trailblazer. He was elected, and he came to me and offered me a job as his chief of staff when I was 26. I had never worked in local government before, but he had foresight and vision. He said, the lack of services and amenities we have in North Long Beach, we have to have a community empowerment model to address it. We have to get our people involved. So I want to hire a community organizer, somebody with an organizing background to be a part of this change. So Steve Neal gave me an opportunity to come and work for the city of Long Beach. It's one of the best opportunities of my life. Now, a little bit about my district. When we got involved, there were a few things about our district. We're the only district without a bank. There was an old Farmers and Merchants Bank that got redeveloped to build some housing, it was over on Artesia. So we were the only district without a bank. But like I said, it was how families like mine where everybody works. So everybody gets a paycheck every 2 weeks. So guess what's on every corner? Cat cashing places and payday lending, right? We also are a city, are a part of town where you have multiple generations living in the same household, grandma, grandkid, but we were the only district in the city that didn't have a paramedic. So it was 3 minutes slower to come to North Long Beach than it was other parts of town. Our paramedic was cut in the FY 2011 budget in July of we adopted in August of 2010. We also, the 90805 zip code, more children go to school in this zip code than any other zip code in the city. 20% of all of our youth go to school in the 90805 zip code, and they live in that zip code. The 9th district is about 60% of that zip code, but we were the only district without a library. Where are kids gonna go after school? Where are they gonna check out their book? Where are they gonna do their homework? There's a library just south of us in the 8th district, and it wasn't in the greatest condition, and the catalog wasn't great. So you had to travel a little bit further, but you still didn't have the amenities and resources you needed. So we got to work. We deployed a community empowerment model. Steve likes to say he was a visionary and I was the architect, right? And we put it together. We went from 4 to 13 neighborhood associations across the district, and we began to advocate for ourselves. 4 years later, I ran for city council with Councilman Neal's support. In that moment, we had more capacity than we had before. We were able to do things like this thing called District Captain Program, where we went out and recruited people to get involved in their neighborhood. We were able to do things like bring the city council meeting from City Hall up to Houghton Park for the first time. People came to council meetings for their first time to advocate for themselves. And you can see the transformative results. We were the district with no library. Now we have the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library, the largest, most modern neighborhood branch library in the city. 5,000 people showed up on the day we opened that library. These are facts. We had no paramedic. Today, Rescue 12 is restored. We reduced response times by 3 minutes in my district and 30 seconds citywide. We were, again, a district without a bank, but everybody's working. Chase Bank is standing right on the corner of Atlantic and Artesia. These are proven results. It's standing. We, had an issue with nuisance motels and liquor stores. Councilman Neal started the alcohol nuisance abatement ordinance to crack down on grandfathered liquor stores, and we kept it going and took it citywide. The work we've done in North Long Beach has made an impact across the city. We championed a nuisance motel ordinance because we have nuisance motels that pull down the quality of life in our havens for drug activity and human trafficking. So we've led the effort on motel conversions, acquisitions, and holding them to a higher standard. Having served on the city council and been a leader, advancing this concept of equity, addressing this conversation of North Long Beach is not unique. North Central and West Long Beach have had the same story for a long time. It's time to tell that story differently. It's time to address it differently. One of the first things I did was establish an Office of Equity in our city to help teach the city as an institution how to think about inequity, how to make sure that our policies and the system as an institution, the city as an institution, recognizes its role is to close those gaps. It's not okay to have this deep inequity of 17-year difference of life expectancy in our city, depending on the zip code you lived in, and let that be okay, the standard that we accept. So the Office of Equity was a commitment to internally beginning to shift our systems as a city to begin acknowledging it and recognizing it and changing it in our policies, our funding, and in our programs. I represent a community that's never had representation on the Budget Oversight Committee. Since the history of Long Beach, since we started a Budget Oversight Committee, the 1st district, the 9th district, and the 6th district combined have only shared a combined 2 years of representation. For 2 years, Laura Richardson served on the committee, 2 years. But North Long Beach, the 6th district, and the 1st district have never truly had any representation there. Is it a coincidence that those are the very same communities that deal with deep poverty and inequity, a lack of resources in our community? We have to acknowledge the system. In order to change it, we have to commit to systems thinking. So now that Mayor Garcia is running for Congress, and I think back, and Mayor Garcia is gonna win, and I support Mayor Garcia, and he's gonna do what we expect Congress people to do, raise money and bring it back to the city. That's what we need our members of Congress to do. When I think about our city, the challenges we've had over the past few decades, the challenges we had over the past 2 years, and the way that we've stepped up in those moments, being the first major city in America to vaccinate 99% of our seniors, changing 40% of our city employees to disaster response employees, converting our convention center to get vaccinations and testing, Houghton Park, putting a health center, make sure people get vaccinations and testing, partnering with our schools and our community colleges to feed people. We never had to do food insecurity before. Setting up 10 food banks in North Central and West Long Beach, helping people get shots in the arms and food on the table. When I think about those challenges, and I think about the commitment that we've made to equity in this city, out of duty, I feel a responsibility to step up as vice mayor and run for mayor of Long Beach. Now, when I started this, there were a lot of naysayers. There's still a lot of naysayers who said, how is someone who represents an area of town that has the least votes, amongst the least votes in the city, gonna compete? We've never had a mayor come from North Central or West Long Beach before. It's never happened. So we had to do some internal work of making ourselves believe that this was even a possibility. But I'm proud of our city. Despite those challenges, we won 7 out of 9 council districts in the primary. We won every district in the north side. We won the 6th district. We won every district downtown. We won the west side, and we took one of the 3 districts in East Long Beach. How did we do that? By talking about what we all have in common. Nobody, any part of town wants to have a city that's okay with having a 17-year difference in life expectancy. 2 years ago, when the downtown closed down due to the pandemic, services got furloughed across the whole city, not just in downtown. We're interconnected as a city. So when North Long Beach is hurting, when West Long Beach is hurting, when Central Long Beach is hurting, the whole city hurts. And it's an economic imperative that as we move forward and get our city back on track, we do so in a way that no city is left behind. That is a message that unites our city. We won the primary. We still have work to do. The forces who resist change are doing everything they can to deny this moment. And I acknowledge that. I'm here because if you haven't made a commitment to a candidate and you want to hear me out, I'm here. I have a proven track record of delivering results. I can take you there and show it today. I have plans and visions for what we can do as a city. I have the coalition. I'm proud that the 4 out of 5 school board members have endorsed my campaign. The majority of the college board and city council members have endorsed our campaign. Our biggest partner on homelessness is the county. I'm proud that Supervisor Janice Hahn and Holly Mitchell and the majority of members of the LA County Board of Supervisors have endorsed our campaign for mayor. This is about support, building broad support so that we can lead on day one and have those relationships. And most recently, about a month ago, the mayor who stayed out during the primary, he served with me and he served with Susie Price. The mayor made an endorsement and said he's voting for Rex Richardson for mayor. Now, only a few people who are living have done the job of mayor of this city, and only one person has done the job as mayor through this pandemic and knows what the challenges are today. And our mayor, a month ago, said, I'm voting for Rex Richardson for mayor. So I humbly ask for your support. I acknowledge that this is a moment that we're in. We have a unique moment that we've never had in history. I fully acknowledge that, but we cannot do that if we are divided. And so I ask you humbly for your support. Thank you.
It'll be after, so we'll go through some. No, you need your. Okay, so our agenda. So we'll go through some questions that we have prepared. We have 4 or 5 questions, and then after we complete those questions, then you all will have the opportunity to come up to the microphone and ask questions. And we're going to ask that you come up here to ask the questions because they're streaming and the cameras are pointed straight in this direction. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So let's start with homelessness, and this question specifically relates to homelessness within the 6th district. So as homelessness continues to rise throughout the city, the 6th district has seen an influx of homeless camps erected in spaces that are frequented by elders and children, including a steady rise of property crime and violence. We know that part of the city's solution to homelessness included Project Home Key, a program which helps serve adults experiencing homelessness as they prepare for permanent housing solutions by turning existing hotels and motels into interim housing units. In a recent debate, You stated that the key to creating business corridors and infrastructure in Central and West Long Beach is to eliminate nuisance properties like motels, liquor stores, and bars to draw interest from corporations and business owners. How viable is this plan for the 6th District if nuisance motels are being turned into Project Home Key centers and contributing to the nuisances that prevent the retention of existing businesses and the establishment of new?
All right, thank you. Just a few things. So homelessness, how are we gonna address nuisance motels, right? Just a few things there. So on homelessness, let's acknowledge that we had a homeless crisis prior to the pandemic. It was already happening. It didn't manifest in the same ways that it manifests now, but we saw it in Central and North and West Long Beach. Along the LA River, we saw it. I represent the area with the LA River and the intersection of 1791. So we've been dealing with this for a long time. The pandemic exacerbated the problem. We also need to acknowledge that we have a city where 50% of the people in our city are living paycheck to paycheck, meaning one emergency from being on the street. We also know that we haven't kept pace with housing production since the loss of redevelopment in 2013, where we used to invest $25 to $30 million a year into subsidizing affordable housing. There's one in my district, Ramona Senior Apartments, 61 units of senior housing. We put like $1.5 million into the project and got 61 units because we leveraged other resources. All of these things are compounding. The lack of housing, a homeless issue, poverty, and a city filled with renters and people who are housing burden, meaning they spend more than 50% of their income on rent. That's our situation. I believe we have to do everything we can from a humanitarian standpoint and from a responsibility standpoint to address the issue both of supply and making sure we keep people in their homes and make sure we have protections for renters so you can't be evicted without cause to keep people in their homes. We also need to do outreach and invest in mental health and all of those things. Shelter is a part of the mix. For a long time, we didn't have a single shelter in the city. Every year, we would declare an emergency during the winter to establish the Long Beach Winter Shelter. Every year, City Council would declare an emergency. Then we would play political hot potato on where to put the shelter. Is it gonna be in the 1st District this year? Is it gonna be in the 9th District? Is it gonna be in the 8th? A couple years ago, we said, there was a report called the Everyone Home Report that said, here's what we need to do if we're gonna manage this issue better. Because this concept of homelessness is not something that people say that we're gonna end it. You're not gonna end it, but we can manage it better than it's being managed now and produce the outcomes that we want to see. So the report came back and said we needed to build about this many units of shelter. It was 500 units of shelter to address the issue. It was about 2,000 more affordable units and a number of other things that we needed to do. So I stepped forward, worked with our community members because we formed new associations. We had that support. We said, we'll do it. We will build the city's first municipal homeless shelter. Great, Atlantic Bridge community is open. But that wasn't enough. That's 125 beds. The goal was 500 prior to the pandemic. After that happened, more neighborhoods were willing to say, hey, it worked out in the 9th District. They opened the Atlantic Bridge community. We now just created a whole new partnership to expand it in partnership with Villages of Cabrillo to build affordable housing, workforce housing, some gardens, and other things with it. We just voted on that 2 weeks ago at City Council. But that inspired other council members to say, what can we do? We're willing. So one thing that could be done was motel conversions, particularly nuisance motels, ones that had already been attracting crime, blight, and violence. And so we inspired other council districts to step up. We acquired 3 motels. We just acquired our 4th, Luxury Inn, the worst nuisance motel in the city by far, just acquired it in North Long Beach. Now that's not the long-term solution. Once we acquire it, the thing you have is control over the site. You control who manages the site, who maintains the site. If those sites are being nuisances to your community, you don't have to go to a third party now. You go to the city because the city is responsible for how they manage or maintain that facility. The Atlantic Bridge community, we haven't had a lot of problems, but there was one time where we were in between contractors and we did see a problem. As a council member, I cracked down on that. And I said, city, you better get in there and fix that because this is not what we sold to the residents. Now let's talk long term. How are we gonna actually, at the end of the day, transform our communities, and how are we gonna address this homeless crisis long term? I think a big problem about why we haven't seen the economic progress in North Central Long Beach that we need to see is because our zoning and our land use is very outdated. In North Long Beach, you would see, a chop shop next to a liquor store, next to a nail shop, next to a fourplex, all in one corridor. There's one place in North Long Beach, it's a CVS. As you're driving north on Atlantic, you see the back of the building, you see the side of the building, but at no point do you see the front door or a window. That was built 20 years ago, which meant there were no modern design standards that said what could and can't be built or design guidelines on that corridor. The zoning was not updated. They would not build the very same thing on a corridor that has updated zoning, like on Pine Avenue or on 2nd Street. You wouldn't build a building with its back to the street because it's not designed in a way that encourages positive social interaction. So one of the first things we have to do is improve the zoning, update the zoning. In North Long Beach, that's what we're doing. We just did the Uptown Plan, Uptown Planning, Land Use, and Neighborhood Strategy. Started with Atlantic and Artesia, updated the zoning, and now we're doing every corridor north of Del Amo. So it encourages the things that we need, grocery stores and banks. It discourages the things that we don't need, like liquor stores and nuisance motels. So that's one thing that we have to do across the city. Some of that work's beginning here, right? But like the West Side doesn't have a lot, and outside of Anaheim, there's not a lot else going on in Central Long Beach. So that's something we have to do. In terms of the motels, I think that we have to acknowledge that like the 5 motels on Long Beach Boulevard and North Long Beach were there before the 710 was built. That's why they were built. People used to drive Long Beach Boulevard to go from the beach up to Pasadena, but people use the 710 now. So those motels are what's called an outdated land use. So it attracts different things now. It attracts truckers, nuisance activities, hourly rates. That's why we did the nuisance motel ordinance to restrict those things from happening. But ultimately, we have to just acknowledge that we don't need 5 motels on Long Beach Boulevard. You probably don't need that many motels on Anaheim or on our PCH. So we have to sort of think about what the comprehensive strategy is to hold them together. Now, once you do those things, then you have to invest in the community to attract the businesses that you do want, because we didn't have a bank in North Long Beach. I met with bank after bank. They would tell me a couple things. They would say, 1, the income demographics don't match. They would say, 2, you're too close to a freeway. We don't want to get robbed. They would say, the other thing is we want to be in the parking lot with a grocery store. Well, let's say your community doesn't have a lot of grocery stores either. Then there's not a lot of avenues to get a bank. So the way we got it there was we designed a nice shopping center, and we incentivized it by writing down the sale price on the property so they can pass that on to a favorable lease, the rent, to get that bank there. We made up that money in 2 years through additional property taxes and sales taxes that we received from the new valuation on the property. So we basically paid for it ourselves to incentivize the bank to come. The last person to do that in this city was Laura Richardson with the Union Bank in Central Long Beach. The last time someone actually got a bank to come to North Central and West Long Beach. I've worked for the city for 12 years. I've watched and studied this city. I know what it takes to turn these things around, and I have a proven track record of doing it. I just want the opportunity to do it for the whole city.
Thank you.
I won't take as long on the next question, Sheba.
I appreciate that. No, so now I'm going to put you on the spot because your phone is dead and I couldn't text you to get the full context. Since we're on the topic of homelessness, and I know that you have a question about homelessness and the percentage of African Americans in our city that are homeless, if you could ask that.
The homeless report that came out recently, it was presented in front of City Council. There was a 62% increase. Which is disproportionate with respect to other cities in the county. We realized there's 3,296 people, and an overwhelming amount of them, I think 46% of them, are African American. I think the question we talked about earlier was with respect to your plans of if you were to become mayor, what would it look like to pool resources and increase opportunities for us to specifically engage with the disproportionate amount of African Americans who are currently on the streets?
So a few things. We have to have a comprehensive plan. I won't go all the way through it, but here's my plan. It's called the HOPE Plan. It talks about housing, outreach, pathways to get off the street, and expanding mental health services. But I want to talk more specifically to the Black community. We have to address root causes. We have to acknowledge that we've seen a substance use epidemic before in the Black community. It was the crack epidemic. I lived through that. I have family members, very close family members, who lived through and experienced that. And we know that there was a lack of attention. It wasn't considered a crisis. The crack epidemic was a black epidemic, and the resources didn't show up. We have to make sure that we invest in mental health and substance use in our communities, and we make sure that people from our communities are allowed to deploy that work. We need people who have cultural competency. My little brother, so I said I had an older sister and a younger brother. When I was 17, I got my college acceptance letter. That was my experience. When he was 17, he had a very different experience. He got into a fight, he was shot in the back, he was airlifted to Long Beach Memorial from out where we were, out in the Covina area. Now my trajectory, because I was on a college campus and I had scaffolding and support, I headed in a certain direction. His experience led to trauma, substance use, and a whole host of things. My little brother has dealt with mental health issues and chronic homelessness ever since that moment. Now, I know that I'm a council member. I know how government works. I've been the president of the whole Southern California regional government, and it was even difficult for me to navigate the system to get my brother out. It was hard for me. Imagine if you don't know how government works. Imagine if you speak a different language. Imagine if you're poor. Imagine if you work 2 jobs and you're a single mom. Everybody on that street is somebody's brother or sister or mom. We have to lead with empathy. It's not just about the statistic. Those people are assets. Because we saw what happened in the crack epidemic, our community knows that we have to believe in second chances, that people will come back. I have hope that people will come back, but we have to be that open door to make it happen. So here's a few concrete proposals. 1, we have our own public health department in the city that allows us to do more work around public health, outreach, locally, look at our own local data and structure programs to respond. Let's say it's STIs, let's say it's COVID. Do some of the things we did during the pandemic. But mental health services is a responsibility of LA County. So there are great organizations doing mental health in the community, but they don't have a requirement to coordinate. It's not required to coordinate with our local continuum of care that's within our own health department. That creates gaps in service that's hard for people to navigate. So what we need to do is partner with LA County. And a number of jurisdictions have done this to localize mental health services so that funding can come directly to us. Or we have a say in who those local partners are, that they have cultural competency, that they know our communities, and that they're required to share data with us and to coordinate with us on strategies. By doing so, we can have a more robust continuum and have more responsibility to create a safety net in our communities. Now, this isn't just an idea. I brought this to City Council a year ago. After meeting with the hospitals in Long Beach, the mental health service providers in Long Beach, I brought them together at the Ron Arias Health Equity Center, a community center that I led the establishment of in North Long Beach. And we asked the question, if we had more local control over public health or mental health issues, what would you do? Here are some of the things that came back. They said, number 1, when people come in off the street, and let's say they have a cut leg or a cut arm, they fix their leg, they fix their arm, and when they go back on the street, they're back within 72 hours. So a lot of times the hospitals just say, well, just take this bed. But they don't have a lot of beds. What they need is what's called a step-down facility, a recuperative care facility, meaning when that arm gets fixed, you don't go back into the encampment, you go to a place where you can sleep for 2 weeks, get back on your meds, talk to someone who can provide services, get 3 meals in your tummy, and then maybe you're ready at that point to head off, and back into a normal, on track. We don't have a single recuperative care facility in our entire city. Hospitals are directing people as far as East LA for that service. So where do you think people go? Right back out on the street. It's a revolving door. That's what the hospitals said, right? So we got these recommendations. We took it to City Council. City Council approved it unanimously to begin the negotiations with the county and begin to discuss with the county partnerships. That proposal is coming back to the City Council November, December, Q3. That comes back with a menu of options of things that we can take more responsibility over. If we are the ones doing the outreach with the cultural competency, we can make sure that our communities, Black communities, brown communities, local families, know who to call and who's gonna respond when you have an emergency. The other thing I'll say, because this is big and comprehensive, is there's a direct connection also on homelessness with gentrification. We have to, I'm gonna tell a little story, I won't be as long on this one, but a few years back, when Councilman Neal was on the City Council, there was a plan called the Downtown Plan. And this plan was to build 5,000 additional units in downtown and increase height. in order to spur more economic activity. And it's been a success. They've built every unit they said they're gonna build. Downtown is now taller. But there was a cautionary tale. The community came out and said, this is going to displace vulnerable communities that live in the downtown, particularly the north part. So we need 4 things. It was local hire on construction through a project labor agreement. The second was a no net loss policy. So if you take out a unit that was affordable, you need to replace at least that unit, so there's no net loss. A first right of refusal for people who lived in the downtown, to where when that affordable housing unit is built, you get to live in it first. And the fourth one was a policy called inclusionary housing that said a portion of every unit of housing, if they take that density bonus and that expedited environmental impact report process, then a portion of those units have to be set aside as affordable. The city council didn't vote for that. Steve Neal did. The city council said no. It was a 6-3 vote. 3 council members said yes, 6 council members said no. We weren't ready for that at the time. Today, all of those policies exist. Our council has now delivered every one of those policies. We have a citywide project labor agreement. We have inclusionary housing. We have no net loss and first right of refusal. But it's too late for those families who were displaced. So what do we have to do? We have to not be able to say out of one side of our mouth that, homelessness is our top priority and we care about poor people, but out the other side of our mouths, talk about not building housing or not supporting tenant protections, because it's inconsistent. I'm the candidate who's been consistent. Renters need to have rights. We need to invest in tenant protections and anti-gentrification measures, like I just mentioned. We have to build housing, and we have to do outreach, and we have to build shelter. All of those things have to happen. That's why my HOPE plan is comprehensive. I'm not saying I'm doubling down on one thing, like outreach. You can do all the outreach in the world, but I just went out with the outreach workers. And you know what they told me? When we finally get somebody, after building up trust with them, talking to them 10, 12 times, and they finally say, I'm ready to come off the street, we say, okay, great. It'll be 3 weeks till we have a bed for you. Does that make any sense? We have to be comprehensive. We have to tell the truth to people. By owning the issue and being proactive about anti-gentrification and building housing that's affordable, we can make sure that Black people have an opportunity to thrive in the city and that they're not being pushed out into adjacent communities. Thank you.
So earlier, when you introduced yourself, you talked about how you were fortunate enough to buy your first house in North Long Beach at a young age. So my next question pertains to home ownership for Blacks in the city of Long Beach. So in the city of Long Beach, Blacks comprise the lowest percentage of home ownership at 24.2%. What do you plan to tangibly do to improve the economic life of the Black renter class that largely comprises Long Beach? And how will you get them into their own homes as you were able to do in your 20s?
Buying a home was one of the best decisions I ever made, but I have to acknowledge I had a good job. I had a good job, and the prices were affordable, and the down payment was FHA, so it was 3.5%. And I had help, $8,000 tax credit from Barack Obama. Thanks, Obama. But today, the properties are 3 times the cost they were when I bought my first one at 25. The data shows that homes are being purchased, but not by people at the same affordability level of the people who live in that existing community. That's what the data shows. The data also shows that creditworthiness is not the most significant barrier. There are non-bank lenders that can get you financed with a 630 credit score. That's just the truth. The most significant barrier is the down payment, 3.5% or 20% if you're doing conventional. The average person does not have $100,000 to $200,000, or if you're doing FHA on a $700,000 house, right? You do the math, maybe they need 45, maybe they need 50, right? I did a study on this. I led an effort in partnership with with LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation, called Everyone In. It was an initiative around how we can make sure that our economy benefits everybody. And it started with a study. In that study, we partnered with Greenlining Institute that said the most significant thing that we could do to address this barrier was down payment assistance. I put that platform into our Everyone In plan. And then 2 years ago, when we had the unrest with George Floyd, we put forward the Racial Equity Reconciliation Initiative. Those plans went into the Racial Equity Reconciliation Initiative report. Where am I going with this? That report place an equity lens on what the things that we fund and budget now. Our Recovery Act, when we secured $230 million to come help with the recovery, about $90 million of that went to direct grants with an equity lens based on the Racial Equity Report. I'm proud to announce that based on that work, on Monday we're announcing a down payment assistance fund of $3 million that would begin in January. Expect the announcement on Monday from our city manager. I have a proven track record of doing what I say I'm gonna do. Now I'm one council member and there are 9. Imagine what we could do if we have an equity lens on the whole city as mayor. This fund is a down payment on a much bigger commitment. We know that we have to think about other ways to get people into home ownership. I'll give you an example. We have a big issue with retention right now with city employees. It's public, it's also private. In the private sector, you heard of the great resignation. People will not do the same work for the same amount of money. That's just the fact right now. So how do we incentivize our city employees to stay? Well, here's one way. Help them buy their first home in the city of Long Beach. So I have a proposal for down payment assistance for city employees. Well, how to make sure that the city employees are people that live in Long Beach so that we're actually helping people, our communities, to get access to employment and then access to jobs. Well, I have a proposal that should I be elected mayor, I'm gonna announce at the first day of the city. It's a preference to anyone who went to Long Beach City College, start with Long Beach State. Anybody who went to Long Beach State, you graduate, you can take the test for a city job and get a preference, meaning you get a bump in the civil service process to get a city job in public service. Let's say you're at Long Beach City College. You haven't finished your degree yet. I know what that's like. When I started with Steve Neal, I hadn't finished my degree yet. I still had value. I could make a difference. So do many of the people at Long Beach City College. So if you don't have your degree yet, we can set out a policy that allows you to get that job that requires the bachelor's degree under a non-career status. And once you finish your degree, because we're helping you, once you finish your degree, now you get the career status and access to retirement and a pension. These are examples of the things we can do to tighten up our hiring. Because a part of the reason why we can't retain people is because I believe we're hiring some of the wrong people. I know there are people in our community today that would love to be a refuse operator, because anybody seen Fences, August Wilson? Historically, being a trash truck driver was a respectable job. You can put yourself through you can get to retirement, you can put your children through college. That's public service, and I believe all work has dignity. So why aren't we going to our local people who, let's say they don't meet some of the requirements, but they love our city and they're raised in our city and they want a retirement and they want health care, but maybe they made a mistake before they were 26 and disqualified them from the job. One of the best things we can do for them and for us is give them a second chance and offer them a city job. Those are the things we can do within our own control to make sure that we are giving our communities second chances, creating pipelines to employment, and making sure that employment lands with home ownership and with retirement. That's the way we have to think as a city. The city is an organization. That's all it is. It's an institution. It does what it's designed to do. It's time for us to redesign that organization with a bigger, broader agenda and bigger, broader vision that is more inclusive, that says we value the people of our city. All 500,000 of them, no matter what zip code you live in. Thanks.
So I have 2 more questions before we open it up to the open mic. And Rex came here in the spirit of clarifying some things, because we had a rough conversation about some things that I had heard and I wanted clarification on. So this is one of them. Long Beach is a melting pot of diversity, with one of the lures to our great city being opportunity and advancement. A July 2021 US Census estimate states that Blacks make up 12.6% of the Long Beach population. In a video that has gone viral within the African American community, you were recorded saying, "The Latino future is my future." As you can imagine, that statement is a cause for concern within the African American community. Can you please provide context for that statement and share more about the African American and future in Long Beach under your leadership as mayor?
Sure. A couple of things. Thank you. A couple of things. I want to start. Come here, Mila. Come here. Come here. And you too, Alina. You come here. This is Mila Rose. Her middle name, Rose, is named after 2 family members Rosetta Freeman, my great-grandmother from Kennedy, Alabama, who is black, and also Rosendo Nieves, her grandfather, who is Puerto Rican. The black community is my future, the Latino community is my future, because these children are my future. Now, I question who would take, thank you, girls, go sit down. Good job tonight. It's our last one, girls. No more. My beautiful daughters and my beautiful wife, Nina Nieves Richardson, born in Inglewood, raised in Inglewood, right? But her daddy is from Calle, Puerto Rico. That's our community, y'all. That's our people. What are we thinking? We have to go big picture. For somebody to take a clip out of context and make it go, and I question how viral it went, because I didn't get it. You have to question what the agenda is. I told you, some of these things were passed on from my grandmother to my mother to me. And I have a full acknowledgement of white supremacy and the tactics that are done to divide our communities. It's real. It's happened all around America. Can we not deny that? Sometimes we have to question what the agenda is when people circulate these things and go right to the source. You are absolutely right that Sheba brought this up at First Fridays. And I said, I want to meet your group. I want to meet your group. I want to talk to them directly about what I mean by Latinos and blacks and everyone having the opportunity to thrive in our city. We share the same communities. When the Latino community thrives, all of us thrive. When the black community thrives, all of us thrive. That's the concept of equity. Every community gets the things that they need to thrive. It's not exclusionary. Now, to talk about the black future, I'm a council member. When I started on city council, it was taboo to talk about politics and race at City Hall. That was the culture. Steve can attest to that. It was all good news all the time coming out of city manager's office. I remember when we started talking about boys and men of color with the My Brother's Keeper initiative I brought to Long Beach, which specifically called out black boys and Latino boys and the barriers that they have to success. The pressure that we received by calling out the specific issues relevant to black boys. And it said, well, what about all our kids? I'm not saying that there aren't issues with any community in our city. We're not saying that. But we're saying that the data shows that from within our schools, within the criminal justice system, and just today was listed with homelessness. The black community, there are barriers to our success. It's not the fault of anybody who's in this room, anybody in this city who's alive today. A lot of those instruments were put into place years ago. This is where the white supremacy part comes from. Years ago, we had to get the story right. Years ago, Long Beach was a city. Well, we're gonna take it even broader than that. After the Great Depression, there was a great national recovery effort, similar to what we're going through right now. And a part of it was people were losing their homes. And the federal government for the first time said, we're gonna begin insuring mortgages in communities so people don't lose their homes. Well, we can't insure every mortgage in America, so how do we go about it? Well, we're gonna work with local governments, local bankers, local realtors to establish maps. Those maps were in 4 colors. Green meant this is a good area to invest in. Those areas were predominantly white. You had blue, which said not as good as green, but still pretty safe to invest in. Then you had yellow. Those were considered declining. And then you had red, which meant under the most extreme circumstances can you only insure a mortgage. This process was called redlining. Now, this didn't just happen in the South. This happened here in Long Beach. In North Long Beach and in Central Long Beach, those communities were yellow lined, meaning we were considered declining. And then you look at certain communities in the city were green and blue, which means it's okay to invest in. Now, after that happened, we saw a lack of investment happening in these communities. That's what ultimately happened. It was hard for people to get financing, hard for businesses to establish. That's what happened in Long Beach. And then the national highway system was built, which went through predominantly cheaper communities because you needed to buy open space to build freeways. If you look at the 710 freeway, where does it go? Straight through East LA. Think about the patchwork of freeways, right? 70 to 80% of those freeways built in red and yellow line communities in America. So the 710 corridor, 91 corridor going through Compton and Long Beach wasn't an accident. So what was the effect of that? Poor air quality and the lack of financing led to a lack of resources in that community. So now you have a lack of investment and poor air quality and poor health, all stacked on top of each other. Now those realtors that drew those maps and those bankers, they were local. They were local. This was local policy that was implemented. Now let's fast forward. 50 years later, those very communities today have crime and blight and violence, and people say, oh, all we have to do is clean up the corridor, it'll fix that. You are not gonna erase 50 years of neglect and disinvestment. These council members that are elected, and I'm one of them, good luck. You're not gonna change that in 4 years or 8 years, however long you're on city council. We have to commit to systems change solution. We have to acknowledge that the way we govern, the way we invest has to acknowledge that inequity. And we have to make investments and do policies and strategies to close that gap. That's the work. That's the fundamental understanding. If we want to change this narrative, this tale of two cities, that's what we have to do. From land use, from zoning, from how we invest in our communities, we have to acknowledge how far of a disadvantage we've come from. So that's a little bit of the history of why we are where we are. So there's a lot more I could say, but I'm talking too long. Thank you.
So this is my last question before we open it up for a public question. And I'm calling in a favor in advance of your potential mayorship. What is it, mayor? So Martin Luther King Park, we know, is going through the whole revitalization process. The park, located in the heart of Central Long Beach, is the heart of the African American community. In 1985, a bronze monument of Martin Luther King Jr. was erected. The monument was sculpted by a Yale-educated sculptor, Larry Stokes, who was here last year. The monument holds the designation of one of the first full-body monuments erected to Dr. King in California. The California State Parks Commission has an office called the Office of Historic Preservation, and they've established a process that allows communities to apply for designations as California historical landmarks. The designation process creates limited environmental protections, an automatic listing in the California Register of Historical Resources, a bronze site plat, and it expands funding opportunities for the park. As mayor, can the 6th District count on your support in the form of city consent and local government comment during the application process?
Yes, 100%. But I'm gonna tell a story because this is what I do. I won't take so long on this one, though, I promise. So we had some of the same issues at Houghton Park, which is our regional park in North Long Beach. You have different scale of park. You have like your neighborhood scale, you have the regional park. Regional parks are the ones that have a youth center, a senior center, expanded sort of support. Every time that it rained, we couldn't meet in the building because Steve's shaking his head, because the roof would leak. And there was asbestos and all of this stuff going on, and that was the only place we had to meet in the community. This was prior to having the Obama Library that we have and the Ron Arias Center that we have and the community center we just opened today, right? We have a lot more now than we had back then. But how did we transform it into what we have today? Today you have the Doris Topsy Elbert Community Center, the largest, most modern facility, like community center facility that we actually have in the city now. You have the Ron Arias Health Equity Center there that has a clinic. It has a workforce center inside of it. Our new Office of Youth Development is anchored there. The My Brother's Keeper, My Sister's Keeper work is anchored there. The services that the community needs, we adaptively reused the old building that was a child care center, invested about $5 million into fixing it up and making it energy efficient, and now it's deploying services. This is a facility that people said people wouldn't have concerts in the park at Houghton Park. Like, concerts in the park would not come to North Long Beach. We have the Uptown Jazz Festival at Houghton Park. We've never had a problem. We've had as many as 11,000 people. It wasn't this year, but we've had as many as 11,000 people at the Uptown Jazz Festival. One year we had 11. But normally it's about 5 to 6 is what I would say is what we normally get. We have folks like, this year it was Stephanie Mills, it was Sheila E. We've had Ozo Motley, we've had Poncho Sanchez, Ohio Players, Confunction, and a park people wouldn't said don't do it. Free. It's a free concert. Thank you, Steve. Guapale. It's a free concert. 11 years straight we've held this concert. Why is this relevant? Because it's called placemaking. It started with a vision. We went through a process of a visioning plan for all of North Long Beach and then a visioning plan at Houghton Park. And once you have that plan established, the money comes. That park we did naming of historic figures because it added to the cultural richness. Ron Arias was our city's Latino health officer. It's a health facility. He invested in many of the planted the seeds from many of the things that happened in North Long Beach, right? Doris Topsy Elbert Community Center. She was the first African-American councilwoman in the city's history, right? There's the second largest population, actually The majority of concentration of African American youth live in the 90805 zip code. This is the park that serves that area. They're gonna know her name. Even though she didn't represent that area, she'll know her contributions to the whole city. That's cultural competency. It started with the vision. What's happening at King Park has to start with the vision. Once you get that vision, it's easy, and it has to be centered in community, grassroots. Once you have that vision, it's easier for friends to come in and implement that vision and provide the funding necessary, because the statue, that's important, but there's a whole lot more to do at the park. That's a whole lot more expensive than the statue. The last example I'll give is today. This was set at 6:30 because at 5:30, I had a ribbon cutting today for a new community center in my district that the city didn't pay $1 for at DeForest Park, the new environmental education center. How did we deliver it? It started with a vision plan. We did the DeForest Park vision plan. That plan talked about how we can activate this park, which is a beautiful park, but it had some crime issues, wasn't very activated. How do we do it? Through partnerships. First partnership was with Conservation Corps. After we restored our wetlands, a place people wouldn't go to, the forest wetlands. We did our holiday photos 2 years ago there because it's nice. You got turtles and ducks now, but we needed additional people to go and maintain it and program it, so we partnered with Conservation Corps. And then Conservation Corps approached the city and said, we want a permanent headquarters here. It'll be our lower LA River headquarters. We wanted it at the Forest Park. Well, just so happened, our community center was in terrible shape. We need to rebuild it. They went out and raised every dollar for our new community center that we just cut the ribbon on today. So when people say that we shouldn't expand open space because the money's not there, there's always a way, but it starts with the vision. And it's under construction right now. At the park, if you go there now, the north side of the park has the Discovery Trails. This is another facility at the park, and they're gonna build a campground in North Long Beach. We didn't pay $1 for this. Rivers Martin's Conservancy, others are investing in this park, a beautiful vision. So it starts with a vision. Once we get the vision, Sheba, then it's easier to get the funding, right? Plan your work your plan. These things that I'm talking about are only available because me and Steve Neal early on started visioning it. The vision started. Remember we said the visionary and the architect? Steve laid out the vision. I implemented that vision and expanded on it. That's how it works. That's how we should be thinking about transforming our community. I'm gonna give another example. I'm not gonna do it now, I'm gonna wait till the end. All right, thank you.
The vision and process for King Park is happening now. So I would encourage all of you, if you're on social media, you can follow us at the 6LB, but on Facebook, we share it all the time. That process is happening now through Juneteenth. So if you're interested in being a part of the vision and process for King Park, like he mentioned, please join. I'm going to invite you all over to this microphone. I do have a statement here as you make your way to the microphone from someone that was on the live feed, so I'll start with that. It says, thank you for the clarification of your impressive record and contributions to Long Beach. I completely support your candidacy, and I cannot wait to cast my vote for you. I have been disheartened seeing some people not support you. Why should the community unite behind you?
Well, here's what I would say. I'm not here because of anything, I'm not here without full acknowledgement that people like Steve Neal and people in the community have helped pave the way for this to happen. I believe that we have a responsibility to pay it forward, the work that we have. I believe that I have something to offer the city, and it's different than any mayoral candidate has ever had. We've never had a mayor from North Central or West Long Beach in the 125 years our city has been established. And it's not only that we haven't had representation, but because representation is important, I think having a seat at the table is important, but what's more important is what's being spoken at that table and how people have led, their example. I've been vice mayor twice, I've done the job. I've led on some of Long Beach's largest challenges. I took the leadership of building the city's first municipal shelter. Our district was not a district with resources being thrown at us, but you can see our work today between the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library and Doris Topsy Elbert Community Center and other things. I've led across the region. I was president of Southern California Association of Governments, nicknamed SCAG, terrible name, but important organization. It represents 6 counties, 191 cities, and 19 million people. This is the agency responsible for allocating the housing that needs to be built across our region, funding for transportation. I served as president of this agency and delivered a $628 billion infrastructure, $638 billion infrastructure plan called the Connect SoCal Plan that outlines the infrastructure to be built in Long Beach and across our region for the next 25 years, from ports to transportation, housing, and sustainability. I have a proven track record of delivering on our biggest challenges. I have the coalitions to lead. The mayor does not have a vote. The mayor is only as good as his or her of their ability to bring people together. That's what the mayor's job is. And I've been able to show in how the coalitions we've built, the majority leaders in the city, that we can bring our city together, and we can make sure that our whole city is represented and that we don't leave anyone behind. That's the closing argument. That's why I think that we should get together and vote, all of our communities, and unite behind this historic opportunity that we have. And this takes nothing away from my opponent. I've served with 8 years for my opponent, and I don't have anything negative to say about her. What I would say is Susie Price is not the problem in Long Beach, but I would also say that Susie Price is not the solution to our problems in Long Beach, and I have solutions to our problems in our city. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Pastor Johnson. Good evening, Mr. Rex Richardson. My name is Sharifa Hardy. I'm the president of the Southern California Black Chamber of Commerce for the city of Long Beach. Mr. Richardson, one of the things that you mentioned was redlining and the different things that have happened in the past. I met with Councilwoman Sully Sorrows, Chief of Staff, in February of 2021. He said to me, Sully wants to meet with the black leaders in Long Beach. And I said, okay, we'll meet. He said, we'll do a Zoom, we'll talk about the issues, especially with black businesses in Long Beach. I said, okay, well, I'll wait for that email to come, for that invitation for the Zoom. And as of October 26, 2022, that invitation has not come. I've reached out and followed up for that invitation. It has not come. I have reached out to the mayor's office to have a meeting with the Black Chamber of Commerce. I didn't receive a response. I ran into Mayor Garcia at the Vons on Atlantic, and I said, Mayor Garcia, hi, I'm Sharifa Hardy. I'm the president of the Black Chamber of Commerce for Long Beach. I would like to sit down and talk to you. He said, here's my card, contact my office, and we're gonna meet. As of October 26, 2022, I have not received a response to my email. I booked an appointment with the Long Beach Economic Development Department. They scheduled a Zoom to meet with me. They did a no-call, no-show on that meeting. I waited a little bit. I called back to reschedule a second meeting. They no-called, no-showed on that meeting. I was at Black Chamber of Commerce mixer with Councilman Al Austin, and I said in this meeting that they have no call, no show with me, and Council Al Austin said, Sharifa, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. That next Monday, I got a phone call with my own personal representative to take care of the Southern California Black Chamber of Commerce. So it's not just what's happened in the past in Long Beach. I love what you're doing in North Long Beach, but what about the 6th District here in Long Beach? But I love the fact that when I asked two people, Councilman Al Austin and Rex Richardson, for anything, the two black men come through for us. But it's not the entire city of Long Beach. When I asked you to come here to Greater Harvest to speak to the Black Chamber of Commerce, you came out and you supported us. Long Beach is not supporting us. We have black businesses in Long Beach. I brought my team out here to meet you today. We have Dr. Pacolia Robinson, who's here. We have Dana, who's our executive director here. We want the city of Long Beach to support us and to care about the black people in Long Beach. In this year, 2022, Sully Sorrow canceled the Dr. Martin Luther King parade. However, they allowed the Heil Hitler tribute to go on at the Long Beach Opera, right? You can have a tribute to Hitler inside, but you can't have a celebration for Dr. Martin Luther King outside. You can have everything else, but you cancel us. So, Mayor Richardson, what are you going to do for the black people and the black businesses in Long Beach?
Well, sister, I would tell you you know, the things that you expressed, that's not okay. I didn't know about a Hitler performance at the opera. We're going to have to have a conversation about that. Here's what I would say. Government is made up of people who are infallible. Like, it's people, and people have flaws and implicit biases based on the conditions in which you've grown up. And that's why it's important to have representative government. So we have a diversity of opinion, and so we have representation that can connect with people culturally. And I hope, and you mentioned, I hope that I've been able to do that for you. And I would say, as mayor, I don't plan to stop the way that I lead. I learned very early on, you have to, you're only as effective as the community that stands with you, and you need to start from grassroots. And that's how I started. That's how I've led as a council member. You know, I have a leadership council. We meet with the North Long Beach leaders on a periodic basis. Got a little off during the pandemic, but typically quarterly I would meet with my leaders to talk about their issues. I don't plan to stop those things as mayor. If anything, we're going to build a more robust capacity to do those things. And so I can't speak to all the things that you mentioned, but I'm not running for city council. I'm running for mayor of Long Beach. And as mayor, you represent the whole city. And that's what I intend to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Rex Richardson. I'm Dana Nickerson. I'm the Executive Director of the Black Chamber of Commerce, Long Beach chapter. I enjoyed the answers to your questions, and to expound on some things that you didn't mention and some things that we would like to hear from the chamber. There are many initiatives that are happening in uprising of new business ventures, such as the circular economy and green business, pardon me, as well as these developments that you're speaking to, like transforming motels and the mental health providers. You also mentioned people being needed to deploy to do the work. My question, number one for you is, we have the people who are needed to deploy the work. How do we get connected to the opportunities?
That's a great question. So Long Beach is a big city, and our procurement process is big. We have a multi-billion-dollar budget if you put all of our sort of departments together. The port, the airport, if you expand it to transit, like Long Beach Transit, if you expand it to our educational institutions, Long Beach City College, Long Beach State, Long Beach Unified, we're a big purchaser, and we have to work through local vendors to make things happen. Our health department has to work through local nonprofits and service-based organizations to meet with the community. But we haven't done a great job at being able to organize our procurement to maximize its power, to have sort of a multiplier effect of not just having a good impact on the community, but also supporting our local economy. So this is an issue that we took on as a part of our Everyone In initiative. And one of the Everyone In initiative recommendations was to go through a strategy around inclusive purchasing, procurement processes. The County of Los Angeles set a goal that I think it was 20%, it might be 20% of their purchasing, and this is a multi-billion-dollar budget in the county, will go to social enterprises and women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. They haven't met their goal, but they're tracking it, and they're doing a lot better than they were before. They have a goal. We don't have a goal in Long Beach. One of the barriers to having a goal was that our systems were not centralized. So there's no way to say, this is what the port is doing, this is what transit is doing. Here's another issue. Let's say that you do certify as a small, women of color owned business. You gotta take that certification from the port, but let's say you wanna do something at Long Beach City College. There's a separate certification there. Long Beach Unified, a separate certification there. We're in the same jurisdiction. There's nothing stopping us from working together to have a streamlined certification process so you get the opportunities at every agency. That's one of the recommendations in the Everyone In plan, to do that. This is gonna be a bit expensive initially to begin the process of evaluating it and organizing it. I'm proud that in the recovery plan, we finally allocated some funding. I believe, don't quote me on the number. I don't have it in front of me, but some initial funding to begin that study of organizing our internal city departments so that we can at least establish a goal. Those values that were placed in the economic inclusion plan are now laced throughout the reconciliation plan and our recovery fund. I plan to ensure that we continue that discussion because it just makes sense. Our community is diverse and we have economic challenges, and local governments, what they do is enact local policy to have the maximum benefit on local businesses. This is something that people agree with in all parts of our town. The contractor that lives in 5th District that does tree trimming, he wants an opportunity to work with us or whatever, right? The small business in Central and West Long Beach who's never had a contract because the outreach has never been done. They don't understand our processes. It's not built for them. The contractor that does great work, but has a language barrier, those are the people in our community. So we have to fix those things. As mayor, I'm committed to that.
I had a part two, please. I'm a business leader who's, one of my initiatives is to encourage women and blacks into non-traditional fields. One is land development, and the other is environmental projects that contribute to the circular economy. What do you see, at first I'd like to hear about your environmental plan, and what do you foresee for the brown people, the Latino and black people, being in leadership in those industries?
So I think we have to acknowledge, I'm not gonna go through all of it, but I brought it here. This is our Healthy Communities Environment Plan. It says local action to address climate change. And why is that important to your question? A big part of our climate action adaptation plan is to invest in resilient infrastructure and climate-friendly infrastructure. That's everything from building a pool in the neighborhoods where it's hot to investing in charging stations and cool roof and cool streets and in solar panels, right? Those are investments that we have to partner with folks like our energy provider, our ports to provide, and that in turn creates economic opportunities. There's an organization called Grid Alternatives. They do low cost and free solar in low income communities. I'm proud that the 9th District has more grid alternatives projects than any other district because we saw it as a multiplier effect. They are hiring local folks through Conservation Corps to do the work, but also people in our community get access to solar panels. Linda Wilson, who's a member of this church, one of my North Long Beach leaders, she has solar because of Grid Alternatives. Those are the programs that you will see be accelerated. Now, the problem with the Climate Action Adaptation Plan is that it's not sufficiently funded. That's a big part of it. So we have to be creative in how we identify funding to accelerate it. In 2020, I led a measure called Measure US, the Yes on Us campaign, which taxed oil that's produced in our city and sets those funds away to invest in climate, accelerating our climate action plan, establishing a youth fund, and investing in public health, 3 things that were insufficiently funded in our city. The idea here is that as we move away and transition away from oil, on the way out, let's make sure those revenues do some good things in our community and accelerate the process. Thank you. I'm just gonna keep standing.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Pakoya Robinson. As Sharifa said, I too am a member of the Black Chamber of Commerce, but I'm also a mental health provider. So I'm very passionate about mental health issues, and I hear that come up a lot for Long Beach and our communities and the communities even outside of us. We are all impacted by mental health in some way, shape, or form all the time. My question is, how will Long Beach, you win if you win, address mental health issues for the Black community? There's a lot of communities where you can go and you see the Asian Pacific Islander mental health, the Jewish mental health. There isn't a mental health space for African Americans, Blacks, whichever one you call yourself. I specifically try to make sure I'm providing services to my community. And just as you mentioned, it's really hard to navigate Long Beach's system as myself working for contracts and things like that. So I wanna know, what is the plan in regard to being inclusive for Blacks to come to a space? as well as within the council. There is not enough to say, oh, this one meeting, we brought in mental health professionals like yourself to advise us at this one time. But how about ongoing, to be able to train, to be able to make these decisions about mental health by mental health providers, not people that are just good at policymakers or have gone to school to do what you do. But where are we at the table when it's time to continuously find solutions for mental health, because it's different from homeless and mental health. Very, very different things. And I think those are some of the issues that should be separated out, but it's professionals like myself that need to be in the room regularly to advise. How can or will you address that?
First of all, good to see you. Go Toros. We went to college together. So here's what I would say. I acknowledge that fully, and the city has much more work to do. But I will also say that I like our city, and I like some of the steps that we've taken most recently. Long Beach, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed a lot of the lack of resources that we've had in our communities. We acknowledge that, but we have to acknowledge also some of the seeds were planted in response to that when we placed an equity lens on our response. One thing that began before it was this recovery plan, we had CARES Act. One of the very first things that we did was help support the Black Health Equity Collaborative, a brand new collaborative to address specifically what you're talking about, the unique needs within the Black community that have been there, but were exposed to a larger extent during the pandemic. That's something I plan to continue to do. At our Ron Arias Health Equity Center, you have initiatives anchored at sort of deploying local-based services. That's a model. The Ron Arias Health Equity Center wasn't supposed to be the only one. And the reconciliation plan, it talks about calling out establishing health equity centers. This is the first. How can some of these things be deployed in Central or West? Maybe the King Park Health Facility or the West Long Beach facilities. Let's talk about mental health. A big part of my proposal on homelessness is expanding a more robust capacity to deal with mental health services locally. By having control locally, you can help deploy it under your own local policies around outreach and language access and ensuring that you're targeting communities of color. That's things that we can do when you have local control over the funding. If you don't have local control over the funding, you have to work through third-party agencies. And that's our situation today. Now the county, I'm not gonna say anything bad about the county. They're our biggest partner on this issue of mental health and homelessness. But we can be a bit more aggressive in how we negotiate and talk with them about the funding and how we deploy them, the standards that we put forward. Some would say, oh, that's not possible. You can't do that. It's happening already. We have like the MET teams that we have in our police department. The MET teams are mental evaluation teams. Those clinicians are paid for by the county through a MOU that we have, an agreement. There's nothing that stops us from having a more expanded MOU that says, hey, we can have more local control over certain mental health outreach or services, and we want to place an equity lens on that. So we have cultural competency, we have people that represent the demographics of our whole community. There's nothing that stops that from happening. And so that's the way that I've led. Those are the things that I've done, I can show. And I think it's just a sort of, it shows that my values are one that believes that we should be investing in local service providers to help provide some of that work. Thank you.
How's it going? My name is Jay Clemens, owner of the American Oil gas station in North Long Beach. I love what you're doing with North Long Beach with Uptown Commons, and I just saw the plans for the Great Artesia Project, which is cool. I'm excited to see what you're going to do for entrepreneurs in Long Beach. Now, I'm a big believer in positive affirmations and speaking things to existence. So when you do become the first Black mayor of Long Beach, what are your plans to not only support the existing Black business owners, but to inspire and encourage Black entrepreneurship in Long Beach?
I think, thank you for that question. I think we need to do more. I can tell you, attracting business in North Long Beach was not easy. We have some success stories that we're really proud of, and it took a lot of hand-holding and scaffolding and support to make those businesses thrive. I'll give you an example. Sal's Gumbo Shack. Sally is my friend. She lived on my street. She had a vision of opening a restaurant. She cashed out a portion of her 401k. She talks about this. I ain't putting her business out there. This is her story, right? She leveraged some of her own investments to start a restaurant. Sal's Gumbo Shack has, worked hard to make it work in North Long Beach. But during the pandemic, she adapted. She was able to go to online orders and all of these things. Her business actually grew, and she recently opened a second location in Bixby Knolls. People were not expanding businesses during the pandemic. This Black-owned business adapted and expanded her business during the pandemic. The businesses, cultural businesses, know how to be resilient. They know how to make things work, but they shouldn't have to work so hard or work alone. Because I saw how many times Sal needed to pick up the phone, call Steve Neal, call me, City got to help with this. Oh, it's hard, I gotta fix this. And it was hard. It shouldn't be so hard. When someone gets a business license in our city, you think you even get a welcome letter from the city? You don't even get a welcome letter from the city. There's no actual capacity that the city has when someone pays their business license to say, these are the grant programs we have available. Here's the consultation that you have to offer. But you know who has a plan for that? It's in our Everyone In plan. In our Everyone In plan, it says our city should establish a small business council. We should, and even if it ends up being a opt-in fee on your business license for an extra $10 or whatever, right? That helps support this ongoing sort of welcome wagon that helps outline what's available to you, provide some scaffolding support if you want it, right? Not everybody wants it. The other thing is we have educational institutions who want hands-on integrated educational experience working with small businesses. Where's the partnership with Cal State Long Beach Economic Development and small and business students to get them to help be some of those interns and ambassadors to connect our businesses to the resources that they need? I know this not because I'm a business owner, I'm a council member. And I know how, and my job is to help solve problems for people. That's what it is. And these are the things that people have asked for. And I've seen when they get that hand-holding through the process, it works. Sal is an example, and I can give you other examples if you need them. But thank you so much. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Covington. My pronouns are they and he. I'm a member of the 6th District. I grew up here for many years, and many folks in the room actually helped me grow up into the person I am. I'm a product of the 6th District. And tonight and throughout multiple town forums, you have shared stories, right, of your accomplishments as a council member in North Long Beach, and also some initiatives that are happening. But every time I hear the stories, I feel like what's missing is the specifics of how are you going to commit and invest in Black communities and also the 6th District. I am a Human Relations and Equity Commissioner. My council member actually called on to me to serve. And I'll be honest, I'm here as a resident. Our city is anti-Black. Our city is anti-poor. So, as a person who's running and calling on us to vote for you, what are the specifics? I want to see goals on every one of your plans for the Black community. I want to see goals specifically for the 6th District, because statistically have shown, and I know you got all your plans in front of you, and you like to show it in the forums. Statistics show that our Black community is falling through the cracks. One, intentionally, because that's how the system was built, but two, because folks are prioritizing other things. So as someone who's running for mayor, what are the specifics you're gonna do for the Black community and also the 6th District?
Good question. All right. So a couple things. I would say, first, I am a council member who's typically invested in planning and calling my shots historically. That's the way that we sort of address our issues, and that's not gonna change as mayor. I'm gonna put out plans and set goals and try to implement those goals. The way that we've operated as a campaign with our plans, so this just says one page, right? It doesn't say a whole lot. It's a commitment. You go to the website, it says a whole lot more. But on each of these plans, what it has on the back right here are people who helped inform those plans, local experts. So on housing, for example, it has Rashida Crutchfield, who's a professor in social work, or Elise from United Way, Greater LA, right? Denisa Thomas Whitman, community advocate, who works at Habitat for Humanities. What I would say to you is get on this list and help be a part of the solution. If there are things that are lacking in my planning, which is a result of working together with people, then maybe we need to get some more people to the table to help define those plans, because we're only as good as the community that will work with us. So my challenge to you, Chris, get involved. Tell me where we can improve. My plans are public on the website. We have public safety, we have housing and homelessness, we have climate, we have a plan on immigrant communities, we have a plan, youth rolls out, I believe tomorrow or Wednesday. So we have plans. You are invited to be a part of helping shape those plans. Now, more broadly, I'm not the council member in the 6th district, right? I have broad citywide plans, but I'm happy to sit down with the 6th district community to sharpen the pencil and talk about more specific goals. The things that I've heard today are not things that I wouldn't be supportive of. Investing in King Park and community gardens and housing and homelessness. If we need to sharpen the pencil on my citywide plans to be more specific about what the plan is in the community, I'm happy to do so. Again, in North Long Beach, we had to lay out a plan. I can tell you what the plan is on every corridor because we went through the Uptown Planning, Land Use, and Neighborhood Strategy to outline the needs on every corridor. I can tell you the plan for Houghton Park, specific to where everything will go, because we went through a process of visioning together with the community to establish that plan. DeForest Park, other examples, we went through that community-based process to explore it. So if the 6th district community wants to have a bigger conversation with the mayor, the upcoming mayor, about the plan, I'm here for it. Let's make it happen. But broadly, you can see my commitment broadly, and my plans are to ensuring that every community has a seat at the table. Every community has what they need: housing, access to jobs, economic opportunity. Our youth are invested in. We have strategies to clean our air, expand open space. These broad themes, we have plans and commitments to those today. They're there. So I encourage you, take a look. If there are areas we need to sharpen the pencil, I'm here for it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda. I'm here as a resident, and I'm just trying to get to know you. Hispanics consist of what, 43.2%, whites 28.1%, Black or African American 12.1%, Asians 12.5%. As mayor, how will you approach specifically the Asian community equities with regards to employment, housing, safety, and grant opportunities outside of the Cambodian town community? Because it spreads a lot further than that.
So specifically the Asian community?
Yes.
So I wish there were ways that we could deploy programs with benchmarks and goals that target specifically on employment and, let's say, college admissions and other things based on race, but that was eliminated when affirmative action was eliminated in the state of California. Mm-hmm. So government has to get creative by targeting in other ways, by making sure that we look at the data of where people live, and you can deploy geographically. You can hire people who have relationships within communities to do outreach. Outreach is a big way to deploy programs. So it's much more challenging because we have that barrier. There was an effort in 2020. There was Prop 16, which many of us supported, that would have given us that ability back. Unfortunately, it did not pass. So we have to, the challenge is on us to be more creative in how we can target. I think one way is to make sure that we have representation that is reflective of the demographics of our community as it relates to economic development, public health, outreach, the staff within our city, within key departments. Those are things we can do. Those are things we can aspire to through outreach to make sure local people in the communities are providing those services and outlining ways that we can do better outreach into those communities. And so I would say I represent a community in North Long Beach that's 92% people of color, significant Asian population, Latino population. I have experience dealing with a very diverse district, but I will tell you that just being diverse is not enough. Diversity is just a fact. That's just what we are. It's how we are inclusive, how we take the intentional step to go to people and make sure they feel like the city hears them, and that the city is responsive to them, and that they can see themselves, feel that the city really has their back. The only way to do that is to truly make sure that you're intentionally being inclusive. So if you want an example? Example is, okay, there's been a recent effort on behalf of many communities to talk about how they want to be more represented from a cultural standpoint, right? So the city has moved forward on a number of cultural center efforts, from African American Cultural Center, Latino Cultural Center, Cambodian Cultural Center, a discussion with the Filipino community on the west side about where they want to go. Those things are things that the city can do without specifically saying, we're going to hire this many, this many black people, or we're going to hire this many, so on and so forth. That would sort of go against the law. So we have to be creative and make sure that these strategies are laced into our outreach programs and our policies.
But if we're talking by numbers, and the predominant number here is mostly Cambodian because that's the voice, there are other voices like the Vietnamese voice, the Japanese voice, Punjab voice that is being overlooked. So if we're talking inclusivity and we're talking in numbers, that should really cover everybody. I get it. I understand the history of why we have a Cambodia town. But the Asian community is very much invisible for the most part. How would you change that? How would you approach that? Would you revisit that?
Absolutely. I think an example is just like the Filipino community has organized over recent years to talk about issues more specific to the Filipino community. Healthcare, wage theft, people being, domestic wage theft. These are issues that were brought forward by those communities, and the city hall has responded to those things. And so if it's very easy for government to ignore the smallest voice in the room.
Sure.
We know that. Placing the equity lens calls it out that we have to go out and listen to these voices despite whether or not they're engaged. That is what we've had to do in North Long Beach, for example. It was a squeaky wheel gets the attention scenario, and so we didn't have services for years until we organized and began to sort of, advocate for what we needed. So the city, our health department, our economic development department, the departments, our housing and development services, the departments that are having a real impact on your life, they have to go out and ask the question more specifically to what your needs are. So there are barriers, there are challenges, but we can work through them. So I would love to talk with you further. If there are people that we should meet, I'm happy to set up time to talk and better understand what issues the city is not meeting.
Oh, there's an entire community waiting to hear your voice, just
Absolutely.
because very much invisible.
Thank you.
Montserrat is right there in the room. Montserrat, let's connect. She has a whole entire community of people we need to meet.
So there are 4 more people in this queue, so we'll stop with Franklin after he asks his question, just for the sake of time. There are some little ones in here that start school at 8 a.m., and I have a little one at home that I need to get to. So we'll stop with Franklin.
First of all, thanks for being here. I know it's a lot of weight on your shoulders, being in your position, but we had to state the record a little bit clear about that 6th district. Everything starts from that 6th district. First protest, we built the Potty Pop Warner, most athletes, Long Beach City College right there. And we gotta ask ourselves, how did we get so underserved? How did they forget 6th district? There would be no MLK without the 6th district. I got many millionaire homies. See? So what I'm asking is, when you win, if you win, can you remember the 6th district? Because the 6th district is the backbone of black folks in Long Beach. I'm 59 years old. I just did 40 years. And I shouldn't have done 40 years. Underserved in the judicial system, and it happens. I did it like a man, because I'm from that 6th district.
That's right.
Okay. The brother Franklin, Sanaa, Sheba, they motivated me behind. That's not just a statue. That Martin Luther King, that's a monument. And they don't even treat it like that. It got vandalized. Ain't nobody did nothing. I'm willing to give all my money to, let's go. But Cesar Chavez, I'm not trying to pit people against each other. Within 30 days, the Cesar Chavez statue was fixed. So that's how they think about us, brother. So all I'm asking And we got some legends up in here. Miss Sharon, Miss Holly. Our elders, they shut down, they growing food. It's been shut down for 3 years. So all I'm asking, bring some 6th districts to your board and deal with the up and coming 6th district. Because somewhere somebody dropped the ball and it ain't your fault. It's 6th district fault. Now we trying to repair it. We all getting 501. I even started a 501 called Rock Unity. I fed over 125 people. I feel good about myself. And hygiene that, you know what I mean? And I only been out of prison 8 months. And we gonna work with you. So everybody, we gonna work with you, brother. We don't want no favoritism, but bring along that 6th district because that's where it started. All right, thank you.
Well, first of all, thanks for coming up and raising your issues. I can just give you my word and my commitment. You know, I'm running for mayor because of, like, I acknowledge that our city has not done well by many of our communities, and the greatest example is the 6th district. I acknowledge that. And as mayor, just being the first black mayor does not say very much from a commitment standpoint. I think when I think about a legacy that I want to leave, I would want people to say that Rex was a mayor that looked out for the heart of our city, the 6th district. He turned things around on the west side. He continued his commitment on the north side, and showed that that doesn't mean that the east side has to fail in order for others to thrive. I think there is a way of thinking in our city that makes us believe that we can't aspire to better because the system has somehow been designed that way. And I don't believe that. And I've never believed that. And sometimes that has pissed off some people. But I'm not running for mayor to make friends. I'm running for mayor to make a difference. And you have my commitment. And Sharon, you have my commitment, Sharon, and and people, elders, in the community, you have my commitment. This is what we're gonna do. Feel free to call me to the carpet. Bring me right back here, right? So that's my commitment. And I understand there are people that, haven't supported me from day one, and I get that. And my commitment is I'm gonna work with you anyway. That's what you're supposed to do when you're the leader. You gotta be a mayor for everybody. So that's my commitment.
How you doing, Mr. Richardson?
All right, bro.
My name is DV. By record, my name is Vincent Dillard. I'm a firm supporter of the 6th District, of my brothers and sisters, but I'm from North Long Beach, 69th and Long Beach Boulevard. Okay. I'm a black private contractor, concrete. I've been pouring concrete for 30 years. All my work been solidified out of Long Beach. Never had no support from the city to get work in Long Beach. All the houses I did in Long Beach was on my own accord. I'm a double-degree graduate from Long Beach. You just stated that people from state and city got means of a program to support those with special degree. I'm a double-degree graduate in architectural design and drafting architecture. Black man, my work is solidified. My work is profound in Long Beach and throughout. What would you do to help black contractors like me, not asking for work, but to bless the contractor, to bless the city with work, and people don't have to come crying to y'all for work? What would be your stance if you become mayor on that stance?
First of all, you have the right people, it sounds like, in the room right here. Have we done a procurement exercise or procurement workshop with our Long Beach Black Chamber of Commerce? I don't know that that's ever happened. That's what I mean by making sure we do the outreach with the community. From your record and what you're saying and your experience, I don't know why you wouldn't be the ideal candidate to apply and get a city contract. I think that says a lot about the barriers that we have to getting, doing outreach to communities when you have qualified people in the community do the work. And so my commitment is I'm gonna, it's in my plans. I'm gonna place a real focus on reforming how we do procurement, because I believe it's an economic imperative that our city do a better job at having our local people benefit from our economic progress in the city. These are public dollars, which means they belong to the people, the taxpayer dollars. When we do procurement, it's okay for us to say we want to have this local economic benefit, but a whole system has to be built to make that happen. Connecting people to resources, Long Beach City College, Pacific Gateway, whatever the sort of networks are, we have to work to make sure they're connecting with our local communities and work with service-based organizations. So I want to meet you. You live on the north side. You don't live far from Steve Neal. So I think we should sit down and talk, and talk about what needs to happen. Or, I don't know what happened when you applied. Have you applied for a city contract?
I done did so much stuff. I
Okay.
done helped build. I done helped build the aquarium. All them parking structures when
Right
you go
on.
with your kids. I built
Right.
that.
Right.
That
thank
Alameda
you.
corridor going down Alameda
Mhm.
to Port of Long Beach. I
Right.
helped build that. I did the concrete barrier wall from the 91 freeway to 25th Street downtown LA. My work is solidified. I don't have to prove it.
Right.
People know what I do.
So let's figure it
Now
out.
you got to know what I do, and let's get something going.
All right.
All right.
Hello, Rex. My name is Mika Wayne, and I lived in the 6th District. I'm born and raised in the 6th District. And every now and then I touch and get involved in political things as much as I can. The reason why I'm here today is because I'm passionate about Kings Park in the 6th District, because, and I'm sure some of you guys have heard it before, my mother, who's also was born in the 6th District, had a mental health problem specifically at Kings Park. And she stayed there for 3 days in mental health crisis. And I was the one who had to call 5150 for her so the ambulance can come out and take her to get the proper help. And specifically, we just need more resources, specifically in the 6th District. We talk about it all the time, the lack of communication between the council member now. I mean, is it some way specifically that you said that you can, if it's, you guys can sharpen each other up? Specifically, we need specific, tangible things to happen. I would like to see somebody with mental health skills specifically at that facility center who can come out and engage in the people, Black community specifically, when they are in crisis, and just to be the barrier between higher ups and the people of the community. Number two, my concern with the 6th District is my stepfather also passed away at Kings Park. And I do know that police officers, instead of them engaging with the community, they come and harass instead of addressing the issues there. I believe that if it had been, again, somebody there, it could have worked out different for him. My question to you is, I know you're gonna cover the whole area. How can we pull in the reins of the community, the city council person that's responsible for that area? How can we pull in the reins and make her focus on what the Black community deserves in that district?
Good, thank you. So here's what I'll tell you. The way that things work, everything requires 5 votes to make anything happen. It sounds like there is deep need and funding and resources that are needed for King Park. Your councilwoman can't do it alone. They're gonna need support to overcome those challenges. If I'm not mistaken, those challenges didn't start 2 years ago. You have decades of neglect and lack of investment, which means the city itself needs to invest in King Park into Central Long Beach. You have my commitment. As mayor, I'm gonna work with the 6th District Council person. I'm gonna work with the community members in this room to make sure that, number one, we have a list of what those needs are, plan the work the plan, that we have a plan, and that we take concrete steps to implement that plan to address some of the needs that you mentioned. I'm sorry to hear about the circumstance with your mom. I empathize with that. I've had some situations with my younger brother. I'm sorry that those happen, but I want to see a 6th District and a King Park that inspires positive interactions, where people are having positive stories about what happened in the park. And it's not very dissimilar from what we had at Houghton Park compared to what we have today and where we're heading. And so I'm going to work on it. No, I appreciate it. Those questions unfortunately are not unique. You know, I mean, I don't have to state the obvious. I'm a black man in America. I know the story, but we can all do something about changing that story. In terms of positive interactions with the city and redirect it to what you need. One of the issues I worked on in my first term was establishment of a program called the PATH program. The PATH program, Promising Adults Tomorrow's Hope, it's a diversion program targeted at young people between the age of 18 to 26. And it's based on brain science that says your brain isn't fully developed until you're 26. But the part of your brain that knows what you want, your desire, that's fully developed at 18. So people know exactly what they want. But the ability to slow down and say, whoa, not yet, that part of the brain isn't fully developed yet. And so you've seen, that's why it's, you go to rent a car dealership, you go rent a car, you have different rules if you're under 25 and over 25. It's because that manifests through behavior, right? But it hasn't manifested in our systems, particularly our criminal justice system. And so what we've seen is under the age of 26, one of the departments that engages with that demographic the most, some would think it would be the Parks Department. No, it's actually the police department had more touches with that age group in our city than any other department. So how can we make that experience not always land you right in front of a judge? Because the data also says that under 26, you respond to positive intervention better than negative intervention. Your mind is still malleable and subject to change, and you respond to those positive interventions. So we created a program that said, let's say you make a mistake. you get a drunken disorderly, you get into a fight, you get a ticket, that doesn't have to always land you in front of a judge, which puts you on a different trajectory, where young people, they know it takes a lot longer to pay that fine, and it puts them on a different course. But how can you connect it to jobs and education and the things that we know have a positive impact? So the PATH program, you get a letter when you make that mistake. You get a letter from our city prosecutor. It offers you to connect with our Pacific Gateway Workforce Agency, and they put you on a plan for a positive intervention. It doesn't mean you have to go finish a master's degree. It may say, hey, get back enrolled in Long Beach City College or take this workforce training class. And if you make 6 months of meaningful progress, not finishing your degree, you make 6 months of meaningful progress, that case never gets filed against you. That program, the PATH program, became a model. We've been recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, and the U.S. Department of Labor acknowledged it and gave Long Beach $1 million to make the program permanent. So that was something I did as a council member by working together and partnering with our prosecutor, our workforce agency, our community. Those are the types of things that I would like to see Long Beach invest in more as it relates to not just criminal justice, but also mental health and alternative ways to respond to mental health crisis. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Franklin will be our last one, but the crowd is thinning out, so we'll wrap up with Franklin.
Whatever it is that's coming in, it's coming in from the outside, and I apologize for the smoke. We're at someone's outside checking, seeing where it's coming from. Anybody need some water?
Let's get this water passed out. All right. For me, what I'm challenged with in this election is an issue of trust. And this is a black church. And the reason we're all here right now, a lot of black people are here, is because we know that if you're elected, this is historic for Long Beach. And let's be honest, we would like to see a black mayor in the city. And I heard you say two things tonight. You said that when the Latino community thrives, the black community thrives. And then you said diversity is not enough. It's how we are inclusive. It's apparent the black community is not thriving here in Long Beach. And I want to talk about that inclusivity. The LA City Council members, and we were asked the question, and I don't feel like you answered it. The LA City Council members, certain of them, made comments about black people with daughters who looked like your daughters and mine. They were awful. And this is not just an LA City Council thing, this is a Long Beach thing, because the same man, Ron Herrera, had a meeting here with Long Beach residents. His chief of staff, your chief of staff, is his daughter. We need to know that we can trust you if you're elected. And that's really just the bottom line. How do we do that? I mean, you talked about Steve Neal and his election being historic. It was. But something also historical happened in the 6th district. We lost the black seat. And you campaigned for Suli Sorrow. And she did not fix that statute. And I came there and spoke about it. So my thing is like, are you going to go to bat for us? And the truth is, a lot of people ask some very specific questions about blackness. And I feel like it was kind of walked around. And I know you can't say certain things, it's being taped, I get it. But can we get what? That's the issue. Can we trust you if you're elected that you're going to go to bat for us?
So, a couple things. So, I think earlier how do I want to go about this? All right, so here's what I'm gonna say. Like, I'm imperfect. I'm not a perfect man, but I'm putting my best foot forward. I can show you what I've done in the district. I can show you how black people, Latinos, Asians have better representation in my community than they've ever had. I can acknowledge that, sure, Steve Neal opened the door for me, but who opened the door for Steve Neal? It was, the council, there's been no council member elected outside the 6th district, so we have to look back to people like Dee Andrews and Laura Richardson, Doris Topsy-Elvert, because they were the first, and they dealt with the things we're dealing with before all of us had dealt with them. We know that our city is not perfect. We know that we have a history of inequality. We also know that we have issues of trust in our black community. I acknowledge that. I am not here to be a savior. What I can promise you is that I will work hard every day. If people know anything about me, they know that Rex puts in work. I can show you what I've done. I can tell you what we plan to do. And my commitment is to work together with you. And I believe that trust is built on experience. By working together, you build that experience and you build trust. And so there was a lot in the question, stuff about my chief of staff and all of that stuff. Like, look, I work with good people. My chief of staff served the city for 17 years. She worked in our health department for 9 years. She's born and raised right here in the city of Long Beach. She's a great person. She was my chief of staff since 2014 when she had worked in the health department on the Heal Zone initiative, and we worked together in North Long Beach. And her mentor was Ron Arias, our health director. And he had a great relationship with Steve Neal, so she and I were deep, close friends. And she became my chief of staff, and she's a great public servant. And I feel sorry that she's being pulled into this politics to score political points. She was in that role 5 years before her father ever took the role as head of the LA County Federation of Labor. That's what people won't tell you, because it's political season, and they're looking to score political points. But what I can tell you is the season is ending in 13 days. Are y'all ready to make a difference in this city? Are y'all ready to put aside our differences and put in some work? That's what I'm proposing that we do, that we put in work. We get Central Long Beach, we fix King Park. Let's do what we have to do to fix King Park. Let's build housing that's affordable for our people. Let's make sure that local people get jobs with the city. Let's make sure that small businesses have navigation and support. Let's make sure that our budget aligns with our values, that we invest in North Central and West Long Beach, but also invest in east part of town and make sure that those communities have open space and have the things that they need to thrive. That's what I'm proposing. So I don't expect that this will be the type of election where you have 100% of the vote. I don't remember any mayor's race where 100% of the people agreed. Not everybody is going to agree. You have a choice to make. I've made my case. We did well in the primary. We've tried to be inclusive. And I can only offer you my word, my experience, and the coalition that we've built that is citywide and diverse and has shown that we can get the job done. That's what I have to present to you. And I hope that that's enough. And if it's not enough and I haven't earned your support, then I commit to continue to work with you when we win. So thank you so much for your time. Was that the last question?
That was the last question.
Let me get my closing statement now.
Wait.
If that's okay. Yes.
So,
I'm ready to go.
Me too.
All right. Luckily, these kids got their friends here. Shout out best friends.
I want to thank those of you that are remaining here. At one point, I was keeping tally tonight. At one point, there were 73 people in this room. And so I want to thank you for taking the time out in this, you're like in the last stretch to come here. It means a lot that you heard me because I came at you sort of hard. Like,
I didn't think it was that hard.
Come to the 6th district.
See, she's a Delta. I'm an Alpha. It wasn't hard. It was all right.
Okay, it was all love. But I appreciate you coming here. I think that it's huge that you fielded questions off the hip, and I think that you provided some of the clarity that people needed. We asked you some hard questions. I appreciate just your professionalism and the way that you responded and your openness to have this interaction with us. So thank you for coming tonight. And go ahead and do your final
All right.
pitch,
Let's hear it one more time for Sheba for pulling this thing together, and the 6 and Greater Harvest. Thank you so much. Again, not my first time here. Before all this happened, we were right here during the pandemic, during your live stream service. You invited me to speak. Thank you so much for continuing to just be this venue for the community. I recognize you, and I will be back. Listen, I've had a lot of questions tonight. We've talked. Thank you so much. If you have additional questions, I'm accessible. Here's what I'm going to leave you with. Yes, Rex tells stories. Jesus spoke in analogies. That's okay. What I'm going to leave you with is an analogy. about what I think the city needs to do moving forward. I think the story in North Long Beach, Central and West, one way to explain to people the kind of commitment that we need to make around equity is this. Imagine that you build a garden. Anybody here like gardening? Somebody was talking about the garden at King Park. Nobody like gardening? All right, I see a couple hands. People like gardening. Let's say you build a garden, and in that garden, you put the things that your community, you feel that you need. Let's say some tomatoes. Let's say some, what else? Some fruit with okra. Somebody said okra. You got tomatoes, okra. Give me one third thing. Kale. Tomatoes, okra, and kale. I don't know what kind of salad you're going to make with that. Collard greens. Okay, I'm going to forget. But you got your tomato, kale, okra, and collard green garden, right? And then you plant that garden, and then you water that garden, and then you harvest your tomato, your kale, your collard greens, and the other thing, okra, right? You harvest it. But after you harvest that, for some reason, you walk away from the garden, and nobody comes back and waters that garden. And then somebody comes back 2 years later and puts the faucet on there and says, I want some tomatoes and some okra and some collard greens. They water it, but nothing comes out the garden. It doesn't bear any fruit. So they say, this garden doesn't work. There's something wrong with that garden. But there's a garden over there that's bearing fruit. I'm going to move my faucet over there. 5 years later, 10 years later, somebody else comes up, tries the same thing, put a faucet on that garden. Nothing comes up. But that other garden has been getting a faucet for 10 years. They bearing fruit. I'm going to move that faucet over here. After 10 years, 20 years, this garden has been starved of nutrients, and that garden over there has been doing okay. Now, those gardens are not equal, right? One is bearing fruit, the other one is filled with weeds and rodents. It's been starved of the nutrients have been starved. And then somebody comes in and says, this is a great plot of land, but it is no longer a garden. Let's build a garden. Let's pull out the weeds that are stealing the nutrients. What are the weeds? Your nuisance liquor stores, your nuisance motels, the check cashing places that are starving the nutrients out of the garden. And then we have to reinvest in that soil. What is that? Building libraries like the Michelle Obama Neighborhood Library, investing in public health in our communities, the Ron Arias Health Equity Center, building a bank for the community instead of a check cashing place. Then you got to put the faucet on it. Faucet is making the community economically viable, affordable housing. Some of the things we need to do to get small businesses to win contracts. Wages that are, good wages where you can support a living, support your community. If you do those things and you turn on that faucet, that community, that garden will bear fruit. It's a simple analogy. In Long Beach for too long, the faucet has been taken away. And we have these things in our communities that we don't want, and we want our communities to thrive. I think that the work of the next mayor fundamentally is to acknowledge the deep inequity that we have and understand that we are not here just to maintain what's there. We are here to invest and grow. That is the fundamental work. That is a commitment to equity that I have, and that is a commitment that I have, that we'll have as mayor. So I want to thank you all for your time, and I will thank you for your time, and I want to just encourage you to join me on this effort. Let's build a garden. Let's make sure all of our communities thrive. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Long Beach, you are a port city. You're not the only port city, and you're not the only person or opportunity that you have. About 30 plus years ago, they're the first black mayor of Oceanside. And just like the first black man in the White House, people stood on the side, black people, and said that they didn't get anything. He didn't do anything. Well, I have been in community outreach and civic engagement for over 30 plus years. I've stood at the flagpoles many times by myself because there was passion in what I believed. Mr. Richardson gets in the mayor's seat. Don't stand outside the building telling him what he should do. You gotta get inside the building. You can't allow him to carry a black agenda by himself. I'm praying for healing throughout the community. There needs to be healing amongst the preachers, healing amongst the different families that are in the streets taking over the territories. There needs to be healing between community-based organizations and faith-based organizations. There needs to be some healing, because if we don't heal, the cancer, the disease, and everything else that's killing us is going to continue to kill us. Every chart that you can describe, we are at the top of the chart. Is it telling us anything? We got to stop pointing and telling other people what they should do, and we need to do it for ourselves like our ancestors did. Whatever they had, they worked with it together to get better. Thank you, sir, for coming. Let us stand. Father, thank you for your love, your kindness, and your tender, sweet mercy. Open up the eyes of our heart, Lord, because we want to see you. We want to see you high and lifted up in the lives of our children, where fentanyl and everything else is ravaging. Our children are now topping the charts on suicide. Father, we need your help. Each and every one of us needs to take inventory of ourselves. Sweep around your own front door before you try to sweep around mine. God, help us to put our differences aside and come together in our common ground, our seniors and our children. We have this moment, this time, this chance. Continue to allow us to grow together. Give us safe passage home. Command angels at every bumper of every car. In Jesus' name we do pray. Thank God and amen. God bless you and thank you all for coming.